USA Insulation, 513-381-3626, 513-381-FOAM. USA Insulation.
55 KRC on demand. Hear Brian Thomas weekdays 5 till 9 a.m. on 55 KRC, the talk station.
806 55 KRC, the talk station. And as promised, welcome to the morning show. Ben Swann, news anchor at Channel 19, WXIX. It's a pleasure to have you on, Ben.
Hey, Brian, thanks for having me.
Ben did a segment recently and does called Reality Check, and you did it about one of my. But listen, I'll be honest with you, Ben. I'm a libertarian. That's just my politics. Everybody who listens to my program knows this. So I find Ron Paul's arguments and his platform largely appealing. Again, I'm not wed to everybody 100% across the board, but Ron Paul, you did the Reality Check series on, and you point out, part of the thing that's the obvious. He's been marginalized a lot of late.
He absolutely has. In fact, that was kind of part of the focus of the story was the fact that media has just not been honest in covering this guy. It wasn't an endorsement so much for Dr. Paul as much as it was a look at the fact that in the debate. Now, last night, did you see the debate last night?
Well, going to bed at 7 o'clock, Ben, it's a little difficult for me to stay up because I get up so early for the morning show. Right? Yeah, but I got the reviews from Politico and the Wall Street Journal, and it sounds to me like he got a lot more airtime last night than he had been.
I would say that last night, the CNN debate last night was the most even in terms of all the candidates getting time to talk. But the CBS one, before that, which was, I think, a week from Saturday.
That the 89-second one?
89 seconds. It was ridiculous. And you don't have to be a Ron Paul fan to recognize that this guy getting 89 seconds compared to Rick Santorum getting 5 minutes and 45 seconds, there's something wrong with how you're distributing time for these candidates to have their platform.
Well, Ben Swann, you're an anchor. You're in the media. You're one of the people that gets to pick and choose perhaps what stories make it to the media. I guess, what's your impression on the mainstream media and its picking and choosing? And I'll just dovetail that with a comment that I heard from one of the CNN folks. Hey, it's our job to pick and choose presidential candidates.
See, I take the exact opposite viewpoint here. I think that the media thinks it's their job. And I think one of the things I've heard, Brian, I got to tell you, since this story went out, it went viral, and I have literally gotten thousands of emails and responses from people, not just around the country, but literally around the world. I've got people from Norway, China, Japan, Sweden, sending emails to me saying, thanks for doing this story because this candidate is not getting coverage. They believe in what he has to say. People from across this country who say that they believe that Ron Paul is not this radical isolationist who's on the fringe. In fact, a lot of what he says, other candidates are building their platforms around. I think the media thinks they have the responsibility to choose the candidate. I believe the media played a huge role in getting President Obama elected. They absolutely chose him as their candidate. They chose him over Hillary Clinton on the Democratic side, and they pushed him, and they gave him incredible favorable coverage. If you've ever looked at the studies that were done after the fact, looking at the amount of favorable coverage that President Obama got versus John McCain in the last election, it wasn't even close.
Oh,
wasn't even close.
And anybody who lived through it could get a sense of that. But you're right, WXIX Ben Swann. There are number crunchers and analysts who have gone back and shown the reality to us that we sort of sensed as we were going through it. But when you see it on paper, it's irrefutable that the media is biased.
Absolutely. And I think that there are people in the media who think that that's their job, is to kind of filter out candidates who really wouldn't be best for the people. And that's part of the problem we have in media and journalism today, is it's all about being an advocate and deciding on behalf of people what they need. And you were talking in your last segment about this idea of lawmakers wanting to be able to tax or pass laws in order to prevent baggage fees on airlines. It's all part of this kind of collectivist idea that we have in this country where somebody has to protect the masses.
Paternalism.
From getting in the wrong spot. And I think media is part of that process. They think, hey, collectively we have to protect the masses out there from candidates who are fringe candidates. They don't like Ron Paul's message, so we're going to put him at the end of the stage and not let him talk.
Well, at Channel 19 WXIX anchor Ben Swann, let me ask you this, and I want to go back, not from that point, because I guess I can sense or see how they might want to protect us against radicals, but let's go back to their unwavering and overwhelming support for a man who I believe is still largely unknown to most Americans, Barack Obama, over John McCain. Because McCain, let's face it, his biggest problem with most Republicans is that he wasn't conservative enough. He was a rhino. So he's not one of those radical elements that the media, you suggest the media is worried about. So where did that all come from?
Well, keep in mind that John McCain was the media darling for many, many years. And if you go all the way back to the 2000 election, he got much more favorable coverage than, at that time, Governor George W. Bush. And yet the media, again, they traded. They swap candidates. They decide who they want to back and who they want to support. I will tell you this, though, Brian. Fox News coming along has changed some of this. But Fox News Network, is becoming isolated on their own in terms of trying to choose an establishment candidate. And what I'm hearing from thousands of people across this country is they are disillusioned with Fox News because they feel like Fox is pushing their own candidates. They feel like Fox is pushing Mitt Romney. They're pushing Gingrich.
Yeah.
They wouldn't even mention Herman Cain for a long time until he really started showing up in the polls, and then they decided they wanted to cover him.
Well, because the crucifixion effort was really a hot topic there for a while with all these so-called women who were victims of actually what I characterized the other day, Ben, as failed dates. Coming out of the woodwork to attack McCain. And so, you get Fox News joining on that bandwagon. But you're right, Ben. I worry about that because you would think fair and balanced Fox News would also, as you have done in your expose, presented the true nature of Ron Paul.
Well, you would think so. And if you're talking about just from a conservative standpoint, Ron Paul is by far the most conservative candidate. He has the most conservative record. As a congressman, he is the most conservative congressman in U.S. history in terms of his voting record, at least going back at least 70 years. So he has the record to back him up. And again, when you have a guy whose platform is being imitated and copied by so many other candidates, you would think the media would take a look at who that candidate is. He's also raising money like nobody else. And if you look at the polling in Iowa, it looks like he may just win Iowa, and not even by a small amount. He may take it by a large amount. And if he does, all of a sudden, does the media show up now and say, who is Ron Paul?
You can make book on that, Ben. If it's a news story that actually has got some traction, they will, but they'll continue to marginalize until it becomes traction worthy. And let me guess, it will be, I don't know, it'll be on the heels of a Ron Paul taking that race, that primary, and then it won't be that will be the news issue. It'll be something scandalous from Ron Paul's history that'll make the news.
Well, and I tell you, one of the things about Ron Paul that frustrates folks is he doesn't have a whole lot of skeletons in the closet. What you know about him is what you know about him. I think one of the issues you're going to run into with this guy, though, is this continued push on issues of national security, issues of the Patriot Act. Again, if you didn't see last night, go back and watch some of the clips. He has a great debate back and forth with Newt Gingrich over the Patriot Act. In fact, I'm going to do a reality check piece next week breaking down the Patriot Act because I've gotten a lot of emails about it.
Fantastic.
There are major issues there. In fact, the one I did last night, it's online right now at fox19.com. You can see it there. I'm doing the second part tonight. We're taking a look at Gingrich in the CBS debate talking about whether or not the president has the power to assassinate a terror suspect, even if it's a U.S.
citizen.
And we're looking at that. I looked at the first part last night and looking at it again tonight, the bigger question. But those are major issues of our time, major issues. And it seems like, you have only really one candidate who is on the constitutional side of that versus where a lot of these other folks fall. Mitt Romney and Newt Gingrich make it clear that they believe the Constitution does not apply to extreme circumstances today. And it seems very clear that they don't believe that.
Wow. And, in my world, I just find that impossible to believe. The Constitution is supposed to be equally applicable to all, and unless that guy was getting ready to pull the trigger and kill someone, in other words, you were trying to prevent the immediate commission of a crime, I don't believe that our government has the right to go around killing its own citizens. Whatever happened to the concept of due process?
Well, keep in mind, too, you've got not only Awalaki, who was killed over there in Yemen. He was a U.S. citizen. But 2 weeks later, not even in the same strike, 2 weeks later, we bombed a family barbecue and killed a 16-year-old son. And then here was the thing, Brian. The U.S. government put out a statement afterwards saying that they killed his son, who was a 21-year-old Yemenese al-Qaeda fighter. It was not until the Washington Post dug around and found this kid's birth certificate that we found out he was not an al-Qaeda fighter. He was 16 years old, and he was born in Denver, Colorado. He was not Yemenese. And so, when you start to give blind trust to the government to do right by its people, to always protect our rights and protect our interests, you're forfeiting an awful lot of liberty. And I think that's the frustration you're seeing from around the country. It's why Ron Paul's rising, because a lot of Americans believe that we are lacking in liberty. And so the whole mantra right now for our Fox 19 here in Cincinnati is to be balanced news. And we want to balance the news. We want to cover stories that other folks won't cover. And we want to be fair, and we truly do want to be balanced.
Ben Swann, Channel 19 WXIX. We will absolutely be watching you. I appreciate what you have to say. It sounds fantastic. I agree with you. We'll be watching the reality check, and I put a copy of your reality check involving Ron Paul on my blog page at 55krc.com. One-stop shopping for all. Ben Swann, I look forward to talking to you again.
Likewise, Brian.
A happy Thanksgiving to you, sir.
To you too.
817 55KRC, the talk station.